Mike, Flav.
Yes, hello, caller. You're on Mid-ish.
So what I was saying is I think that what we're seeing, if the scripture says joy comes in the morning. So if the sunlight, right? Wow, this whole thing is coming apart. That sucks. So if the sunlight, if we see the light shine or the sun rises, right? I think that is the end result, the change. The what we're seeing now, these dynamic things that we're seeing, I would describe as the calm before the storm. And I'm only speaking to what I've seen in history, right? I think that all of these great movements that have taken place that amounted to significant change, there was a dynamic situation preceding it.
Okay.
There was what you're describing preceding it. And then when we actually were able to mobilize with allies and what have you and put ourselves in a position to begin to precipitate such change,
Mhm.
that's when you realize, all right, now the battle's really starting.
Okay.
You know, say we get to a point where defund, for instance, is something that we can actually realize. The
Mhm.
process that it takes for us to get there will involve the cops showing us, or at least from their perspective, showing us the error of our ways by letting people die, by
Right.
not showing up to, for calls, by not showing up to work, by going on strike, by, any of a number of things that I would imagine police are going to do to make it look like this idea of defunding is going to work against us or it's going to be to our detriment. And that's just one aspect of it. There are a lot of white people who are angry, who feel like, and it's, I don't even understand how they come to this conclusion. I think it's so misplaced, right? Like, I don't know how many people I've talked to who have said, their problem when Barack Obama was in office is it was this woe is me story where, now, Barack Obama got in office and, all of a sudden I'm a racist and I just got tired of hearing I was a racist. And I'm like, yo, you mean to tell me that for 8 years of the history of our country, we get one black president and you feel some type of way? You understand what I'm saying? But you have these people.
What do they mean? Who was running up on them, calling them racist
I
all
mean,
of a sudden?
they're just run with this idea that the theme was because we have a black president, we must be racist. That's really, there were a lot of angry white people coming out of the Obama administration because they feel
When they
like it,
elected Trump.
yeah, they feel like it gave marginalized people license to put white supremacy on Front Street,
Yeah.
right?
My
And
my my comment about that ish is, what did you have to fear if marginalized people are now the majority? Is there some sort of difference? I'm being facetious, but the
Yeah.
truth is they fear retaliation for
Yeah.
everything that has happened.
Real.
and not just retaliation, they fear compensation.
Oh yeah,
you,
oh
you
yeah.
know and I'm not talking about like reparations, I'm just talking about what comes with compensation. you know if we're talking about economic equality, that's going to come with a fight. It
Yeah.
means I have the same opportunity to live next door to you.
Yep. Yep.
It means I have the same opportunity to work right next to you. It means,
Right.
all of these things, and they're gonna come with a fight. And people seem to, they have this misguided sense of things where they conflate those ideas with an attack on their lifestyle because they're operating under the notion, again, it's a white supremacist or a white male patriarchal way of thinking that is systemic. It's like systemic racism. The byproduct of that is that white people who don't recognize privilege in this country, they come to this conclusion that this country is so great. I worked hard for everything that I got because I live in a great country that allowed me to do so. And if I have to be held accountable for something that I didn't do, my ancestors did, I'm going to have a problem with it. I'm going to have a problem that these marginalized people I don't have a problem with anybody marginalized or I don't have a problem with a Mexican or a black person or a Native American who does it the right way, quote unquote, and gets to this position. And the reason why you don't have a problem with it is because you never lived in a world where that was the thing, where that was something that was common, where these people had the opportunity. So you have this idea that it's because you don't recognize privilege, right? And this is I call it systemic white male patriarchy, where you don't even understand that you subscribe to this. You know what I mean? But you do, just by saying things. And these people my wife did it. And I had to have a serious conversation with her when, they were talking about raising the minimum wage. And one of the things that my wife went on was, I worked really hard to get a master's degree, and someone who works, and I'm looking at her and I'm like, Belinda, you know what you're doing? This is some years ago. But I'm like, even you are kind of falling into this, like, why do you care? Well, because I worked. Okay, I get it. But so because you felt that you had to work harder than normal in order to put yourself in certain positions, you have a problem if somebody else who didn't even have the same opportunity that you did finds themselves in a situation where they get some type of economic equality. It doesn't even affect you.
And let's be honest, a $15 an hour minimum wage is not economic equality.
It's not. If they're able to get a little bit better, and she thought about that because she's not a shady person. I told you that. It was something that once I brought that to her attention, she really thought about it and was like, you're right. Because when I heard her, this is some years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and I'm like, but you transplant that to the people who suffer from systemic white male patriarchy. I think I'm coining a new term, right? But I think that just comes as a byproduct of systemic racism. You have these people who are walking around complacent and oblivious, and they generally feel like,
To be honest,
I just want to say, I had a conversation, you were probably privy to it, Flav, on my Facebook page, where I told somebody, the idea of great again in America that you hear white male conservatives scream when marginalized people have a complaint. They scream, this is a great country. You have all these opportunities. You're able to do this. You're able to do that. You're able to blah, blah, blah. You remember I said to someone, I said, everything that you think makes America great exists because of the sacrifices of marginalized people.
Right.
Everything that you take credit for, you weren't there. Nobody that looked like you was standing there fighting that fight. It was women. It was LGBTQ people. It was Latinx people. It was Native Americans. It was Black people. All of these things that you say make America great. Oh, we have the freedoms to do this. We have the freedoms to do that. When you try to admonish marginalized people for screaming about economic equality and you throw these things in our face, these are things that you're able to stand on and say that make America great, but you had nothing to do with. You didn't have anything to do with that. It's the marginalized people that give you the foundation to say America's great. And these people will be the ones who have a problem if we start talking economic equality seriously. I'm sorry, go on, Raul.
No, the thing I was going to say or mention along with that is that the people who suffer from systemic white racism are white people. They're poor whites that are stuck in the same job with no end in sight, in the same place, no movement, no vacations, no 401k, nothing. They are the poor white and unspoken to class. I've always said to Democrats, you want to win the country back, you got to start with them. And I'm so sorry, but that's the truth. Because once you take them away from the Republicans never win another election again for the rest of their lives. Ever.
That's a good strategy.
I have always advocated that people talk about poor white Southerners. I have never understood why national strategies have never talked about poor white Southerners. You know,
It's definitely been talked about. Definitely been talked about in the strategy.
But not around me, and I've been around for a while. And when I mention this, you know what the response is, Flav? Oh, you must be that because you can pass for white. And I'm like, how do you respond to something like that when you try to give somebody an idea to move forward with the country, and they're like, well, you could just pass for white, and I'm like, no, I can't, because my name is fucking Raul.
Yeah.
I will never be able to pass as white in this country because I am considered an alien, something exotic, something different. And it doesn't matter how well I speak English. Doesn't matter that my skin is probably lighter than everybody on the show the other day. I was the whitest person there. But I will never be. That's why I don't call myself white. Because in this country, I was labeled Hispanic. And that was to generate my existence, to make me lower than the next person applying for whatever.
Yep.
Well, see, that's very interesting. See, we've had this conversation many times about the many different layers of perception and privilege, right?
Yes.
If we're all three of us are riding in a car, we get stopped by the cops. You may not get fucked with initially, but if they check your ID,
oh, they will. They will.
Then
if he opens his mouth and
That's
speaks.
right.
Then then it's a different situation. So I mean,
you speak with an accent.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't really perceiving your accent too much, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely many different levels of privilege and perception. I mean, I work with a guy who's of Mexican descent who can pass for white, and he's gotten it on both sides, right? Like, he's been in Latinx communities where someone wanted to fuck with him, and then by the time he told them his last name and his heritage, he was okay, but they thought they were about to fuck with a white guy.
Well, quite frankly, I can tell you, and again, it doesn't the color doesn't matter to me, right? So, and it does in a sense that I see color because it's necessary. But what I mean by that is it's not important, in in how I look at the value of another human being. However, I can give you two examples, quite frankly, of Mexican people who use the fact that they can pass for white to their advantage, and they're celebrities.
Yeah.
Both of them work for the WWE. Seth Rollins, who is actually Kobe Lopez, and Bailey.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and she goes by the name Bailey. You know what I mean?
Right.
More recently, you can kind of tell that that they're focusing on, especially, and I think it has something to do with what's going on in diversity. You can kind of tell that she's kind of their WWE wants to focus on the fact that she's Latinx because she's got two champs, and so instead of calling her the champ, they call her the Dos Campanas. You know what I mean? So they're like, you know what I mean, which is kind of speaking to that. But like Seth Rollins, it's interesting because the running joke was like Alberto Del Rio is Mexican and he's promoted as Mexican, and Seth Rollins will come on. He's from Ohio, and whenever he's in that area, he relates to being pretty much a white guy from Ohio, even though he is Kobe Lopez and is of Mexican descent. And I don't know if that's something personal with him. I don't know. It's not even my place to say. You understand what I'm saying? And with Bailey, I don't know if it's just something that we're like, this is the persona we want to embrace so that we can be successful in a company that hasn't had a history of, promoting minorities or marginalized people or what have you, and we can pass. Bailey is very much, and I don't want to be insensitive, she very much presents as a Latinx person, right? Seth Rollins to me too, but most people would never come to that conclusion if you didn't know his name was Kobe Lopez, and you understand what, you just wouldn't know that he's of Mexican descent. And it's interesting because the WWE just promoted this idea that they currently have the most champions in the history of their country that are marginalized people, right? And they literally itemized all of them and they excluded Bailey.
Mm.
So this is by virtue of how they're marketing. Like, they don't count Bailey as a member of the Latinx community for marketing purposes, because Bailey it was Sasha Banks, Biggie, the Asian, Io Shirai,
Right.
Asuka, all of the current champions. The majority of them, the U.S. champion is black. The majority of their champions, if they have like 10 belts, 9 of them, the only person who isn't from a marginalized group is the Scottish guy. He's the only one. All of the other champions in the company are and they were promoting that. And it's interesting because they did not include Bailey in that.
Mm. There is something I'd like to talk to you guys about that's
Sure.
related to Latinx issues. You know, I'm not viewed with good eyes by the rest of the Latin community. As a Cuban, and as a white Cuban for that matter, I am the conqueror. I am the conquistador. I am the problem maker. You know, I represent everything that white people do in this country. But
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was something I wanted to broach.
Of course, and there's always questions about it.
Why is a Cuban?
Cubans just kill. Okay, the first settlers of Cuba that were of Spanish descent enslaved the native people. That's not unusual. But but Christopher Columbus committed mass genocide on the 3 tribes of Cuba.
Okay.
And so there is literally no Mizano or people of native descent that are Latino in Cuba. There's a very small tribe left, very tiny.
I want to take it a step further, and I want you to check me for accuracy.
Sure.
So it was told to me some years ago, and it was an interesting dynamic. I was having a conversation about how I literally was talking about how if black people or other marginalized people weren't in America, that the different groups of white people would discriminate against white people. Because
absolutely.
That's something
you see it in Europe. Absolutely, Ish.
It's something that you've seen throughout America. And somebody of the Latinx community was telling me that when Cubans came here, the Cubans that first began to immigrate here in the early part of the 20th century had money.
They did.
They were wealthy, and that they discriminated against other Latinx communities and against Cubans that were not white Cubans.
That's true.
All right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Excuse me one second. Oh, I ate some eggs and they went down the wrong way. Mm. Anyway, so you're absolutely right that Cubans with money, like anybody else with money that travels abroad, is treated a certain way, and they furthermore treat others a certain way. I had to learn, because I came here with nothing, of the Cubans that came here before and were treating people like crap from other Latin American countries. I never ascribed to that bullshit philosophy, even when I was a Republican. I treated them like brothers or cousins, because I see, unfortunately, I'm religious, and I'm not saying unfortunately for that reason, but I don't.
Likewise,
I don't
same here.
So I treat everybody like we're a world community, and we have to, because we're this is the only rock we're on, and nationalism, racism, bigotry, these are all tools, I think, of division.
Preach.
And well, thank you. But the truth is, I I can't see it. My makeup doesn't allow me to see the difference between a Canadian and a Canadian white guy and an American white guy is none. None. There is none. You're just under a different set of laws, and maybe you say A and like maple syrup a little too much. It's not a crime. But in where I come from, I am constantly reminded that I am an invader, and so when you're talking about the white guys who said during the Obama administration that they're racist, I understand that. I can speak to that perfectly because I feel like that sometimes too in my communities.
I see. One thing I wanted to discuss that we've discussed before that's interesting is like the different ways that different groups view immigration. Like even amongst immigrants, you'll have like someone who, and we see this in Latinx communities in particular, but obviously other groups as well. Groups who feel like, hey, listen, we came here the
The
right
right
way.
way.
Yeah, we immigrated with papers and this and that, and a disdain for like, other like marginalized groups who maybe they feel have not, immigrated the right way. And then there's this like, kind of like this division amongst, amongst groups.
You really see it in Mexicans in California who voted for Donald Trump.
That's like roaches, ingesting Raid because it sounds cool. It's terrible.
Yeah, and it's also like, I mean,
That was a John Leguizamo quote, by the way. He said Latinos voting for Republicans is like roaches voting for Raid.
Yeah, well, you see it in places like Miami, and I guess like in Florida in general. I don't know if it's Cubans or
Cubans do. Cubans can be guilty of that for sure.
Right. I think there's probably more Republican Cubans in general than other Latinx groups.
I think we got Marco Rubio, who is very outspoken about his parents immigrating here the right way.
Yeah, it's his bullshit. I have called him on his bullshit many times. I have been in yelling matches with his chief of staff. So
oh, wow.
he is an empty suit with the brain of a pea. Now there is Cubans in on the Republican side which are fearsome. Ted Cruz is a fearsome intellect. Don't ever think that because Marco Rubio is a fucking pea brain that the same counts for Ted Cruz. He is completely like a genius level lawyer. Don't let that. I would never underestimate that man.
Okay,
as far as I could throw him.
Yes,
that's good to know. We need to know this about the ops.
Yep. So, but the point is that Marco Rubio is literally a tool for more powerful forces. That's always been his hallmark. Since he was in the Florida legislature, he was a tool for Jeb Bush, and then afterwards, he's been a tool for other people.
So I'm gonna pull back the veil a little bit for you, Raul.
All right.
Because if Marco Rubio's positions are his positions, I don't fault him for them. What I will say is what we say in the Black culture.
All right.
There are criticisms, there are critiques, there are stereotypes and things that we will talk about to each other, which is what I'm saying about Marco Rubio. If I was Marco Rubio, I might say those certain things to other Cuban people, but I'm not going to say it in a forum where people who are not Cuban can criticize. You understand what I'm saying? Like, if I feel like these are things that I want to promote and things that need to be said, like there are things in the Black culture that need to be addressed, right?
Oh, yeah.
There are things that Black people need to hear Black people say to each other. But I'm not gonna stand and Indiana and the capital of the Aryan nation and dress down my culture in front of the opposition, so to speak. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what I mean. Like if what Marco Rubio says has merit, it certainly has merit amongst his people.
Yes, very true.
And not even all of his people, right? Whatever,
no, not all.
but it doesn't have merit in front of the world. Like, what are you doing?
No. Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, what you're going to give your opposition the ammunition and stand next to them and give them ammunition to fire at your people. Like, that's what I'm getting at. That's why I said I want to pull back the veil, because I recognize, and I say, me and Michael talk about this, and many Black people will tell you, like, yo, there's some things that we need to address, and we do address them, but we're not going to address them in front of them.
Right.
I'm not about to stand out on Front Street and, you know what I'm saying? Like, and have these conversations. It's like when you say, what about Black on Black crime? I'm not about to have this conversation with you.
No, I never would ask that.
Not you. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay,
I mean,
gotcha.
the people who, when they talk about Black Lives Matter and their argument is, oh, they don't talk about Black on Black crime, I guess Black lives don't matter. Sorry for the voice. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, we never said that we don't address Black on Black crime or that we don't have a problem with it. But we're not about to have this conversation with you because your intentions suck. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, we have these conversations in our community with our youth and with our lead. We certainly do. We're not, you know, there are groups. Black Lives Matter's agenda is not to address Black on Black crime. There are groups like the Mad Dads and DARE, and there are so many organizations that are set up to certainly address those things and educate people within the community on those things. You understand what I'm saying? And these are conversations that we have, but we're not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna be the Black guy that goes on TV and is like, yeah, you know, Black people on TV in front of the world to give all of my enemies this ammunition. Stop it.
Candace does that already.
Yeah, Candace Owens does that enough. And that's what I mean. Like, Marco Rubio is like a Candace Owens. Like, if those things are issues, and I don't know because I'm not Cuban, but if those things are issues that, you know, need to be talked about, you know, amongst the culture, sure. But to use that as a platform, that's where, you know what I'm saying, is problematic to me. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, you're absolutely right. Why would I interrupt when I agree with you? But the thing is that I guess I take it a little differently, because Cubans are the predominant minority group in South Florida. They wield almost an outsized influence, and if I don't have this conversation in public, if I don't tell people exactly, you know, where I stand, how I stand, and what it relates to my own people about, then the rest of the world will not give me any credit when I speak on other matters. And
this is a different forum too, because we're allies. It's the reason why we might have conversations with you about Black issues and on a public forum where we wouldn't necessarily because this is our forum. Who cares if people listen and they disagree? Who cares? Like, I don't care. Like, not, you know, that having been said, absolutely you have license. You know, we'll pull back the veil as well. This is just kind of what we do here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I definitely understand.
And I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just wanted to say that.
No, it's okay. It's just sometimes I forget where I am. Not where I am, but where I am.
You were talking about your credibility to speak on.
Oh, my credibility to speak to Cubans in public. It's because I want people to realize that there's other voices. Much like Flavius just said, he considers the Republican Cubans are the standard. It was the standard when I was growing up and when I first got into politics, but it's changing very fast at this moment because the old guard is
not the standard, but just that it was in my. I just figured that there were more Republican Cubans than there were Latinx Cubans in general, but maybe not the standard. Just maybe just higher.
They are a majority still, because I have to tell you one thing, that nothing happens. Okay, when you talk about dressing down your own people, I've been on Spanish radio where I was called a communist, which to me is like, imagine a 2000 era you were called a terrorist. Because you've been treated like that by other people from what we know. Yep. And so imagine your father fought against this, and then he has to hear you on radio being talked about like a communist. And
Yeah.
so I cannot tell you the pain my family has gone through
I can
because
imagine.
I've chose to gone into politics because and I've chosen the hard road. I could have been the easy road. I could have been working in Marco Rubio's office at the moment had I chosen the easier road.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, sadly. And the fight
or proudly.
or proudly, that I am proud of what I've done because it hasn't been the easy route, and I haven't taken the easy route. And there has been people that have helped me that have nothing to do with Cubans at all because they like who I am and they like the person I am. So I have to say that you know when we talk about okay, we've talked about race, we've talked about class, but we haven't talked about one issue that I'd love to talk about, which is age. We're not really living in we're living in a how do you say it? Geriatricacy. Because basically that's what we're living in. The oldest generation is in control of all the resources and all the political might. And that's what you see in America. Is the boomer generation finally moved in to replace the silent generation, and look where the country is. It's in a shithole. Because but we're next, by the way, guys. You know, we have to fix the shithole, or we can face, you know, certain dissolution by the younger generations, and they'd be right to do it because we have grown up under the thumb of the boomers, and guess what? It hasn't been great for us either. But you know, Generation X is a bit more, you know, like, oh, you're gonna fuck with me? Well, fine, I'll take you all out with me. Yeah. You know, that sort of attitude. But
that's why we need a young president in 2024.
That could be a very good argument that you would make, and you'd be right.
Well, the benefit that Generation X has is that I would argue that we were born in an era of the greatest and at a rapid pace consecutive types of technological growth.
Right.
You know, we were the byproduct of a mini renaissance in the 21st century of people coming out of World War II and, you know, and you know, Vietnam War, and you know, from that point we just saw, like, if you look from 1980 to 2000, the technological advances, you know, when I was a kid, right?
Mind staggering. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's just crazy how rapid, and we were there through it all. You know what I mean? Like when I was, you know, we went from black and white TV to flat screens.
Yep. In a heartbeat too.
Right. We, you know, from, you know, just the advances, you know, cars used to be metal. You know what I'm saying? Like,
in general, our this century has been such a whirlwind of change. My grandmother, I always tell this story. My grandmother on a farm in Camaway, and she was born on a farm with eight sisters, one brother. Right? She learned to ride a horse before she ever saw a car, and she ended up to see the technological revolution of those early 90s, like internet potential. So, I mean, can you imagine her perspective on this type of thing, or your own grandparents' perspective?
Listen, I often tell people, like, my grandfather's father was a slave. So my grandfather was born in 1904, the youngest of 12. And he died in 2002, right? So, I'm always telling people, the things that my grandfather saw, like, he knew people from the 19th century.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? And then he also knew people from the 21st century. You understand what I'm saying? So he pretty much, you know, short of 4 years, he lived he lived throughout the entire 20th century. You know, he's born in 1904. So, you know what I mean? You know, he laid railroad track, you know, across the country, you know, he retired there and then worked at Bethlehem Steel and retired Bethlehem Steel. But he he like you said, he watched the airplane become a regular thing. He
Sure.
was pre TV. He was
From yeah,
around for the advent of the radio. You know what I mean?
absolutely,
You know what I
absolutely,
mean?
absolutely.
Could you
And
imagine?
we have lost so much with our grandparents' generation leaving us because all that wisdom gone in a heartbeat. And I've always felt that that's the biggest crime in the world, that we live such long lives than we used to. In the history of things, very short lives. And every time one of our elders dies, there's an African proverb which I love. It's every time an old person dies, it's like a library being burned to the ground.
Mm.
And I love that proverb because that it tells you that wisdom is in fact an age gift, but but too much of it is can be corrupted as well, which is why I advocate strongly to have different levels of government be represented by different age groups, because you have to if not you get uneven representation.
Mm.
And that when we talk about diversity, guys, what are we really telling the majority population that they're doing? It's not that we want the same things because we didn't earn it or something like that. It's we're telling them because if not, the concerns that we have as minorities are not brought to the front at all ever, because how could they? They're not us. But if you get representation of any kind in any sort of fashion, um, you get a much better government structure for yourself.
Yeah, and more diversity of thought, and
Yes,
you get the best. You get the best ideas, coming into play, right?
right.
Like you look at the astronauts, and it's always a
It,
diverse body of folk and the best folks around. Um, Imagine folks who got to see us get to the moon for the first time, like what that felt like as far as
Must have been
how
so
far,
exciting.
yeah, as far as
well,
technology expanding.
and speaking to diversity, right? It speaks to the idea that you don't know what you don't know. So
Right.
with more diversity, and you have this idea that there is at least more grounds for empathy.
We're
Because
almost out of time, guys. Again, sorry. Just FYI.
you have more grounds for empathy because you don't know what you don't know, right? So at the very least, you can be empathetic to other people's plights. If there's just more diversity, you have more thought processes involved, more,
Star Trek has a wonderful saying about this. It's one of Gene Roddenberry's genius moments. He said that Star Trek's Federation has a saying that says infinite diversity in infinite combination. And I love that saying because that's the strength of what we're trying to convey, but not always. And that's on our fault, right? We weren't always successful conveying the ideas that we do.
so I don't know if I'm being too personal, but I think you have a story to tell that I'd be interested in hearing, with your
Oh,
with your dad's experience, and
oh yeah.
how it led up to, you know I'm definitely like intrigued.
Sure, sure. Next time we get together, I'll tell you as much as I can tell you. There's certain things that my dad never told me, but that's like any man that's been to war.
Right, right.
He's just not. My stepfather is part of the Vietnam generation, and he never talks about the war at all. Period.
Oh yeah, I understand totally. I totally get it. I totally get it. I think yeah, definitely next time, because I don't think I can't I can't be on for another Zoom
Yeah, yeah.
after
No
this one.
worries.
Yeah, that's
After
the
this
same
one.
thing I was saying in the chat. Is let's make this the
Okay.
last one.
Okay.
But it's
Yeah,
been great. It's been great tonight, guys.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Another great show.
yeah.
There
I'm
was
glad.
one of the last episodes. Ish, your last words were like exactly ended the episode, and like a very nice last word for the episode. I forgot exactly what it was, but that was like 1 or 2 episodes ago.
Oh, I finally did something right.
We'll highlight that on the.
But you
we'll make
guys
a
have a
highlight.
good night in case it cuts us off.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you
You
too.
too. You too.
You too.
Yeah.
Definitely awesome having you again.
Thank you, man.
Definitely intend to have you as as often as possible as well. I love this stuff, so I'm always learning. So for sure.
That's great. I'm learning from you guys, so that's important.
Yeah, we'll have to get Joey back on here too.
Yeah, I was wondering if Joey was going to be able to show up tonight, but
I was just gonna say, have you met Joey?
Joey's a good friend of mine for years.
I know. When I think about it, I know. That's how we met, talking in the thread on Joey's page.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Joey's a great guy. I've known him since MySpace days, if you believe that.
Oh wow. Oh
It's been a
wow.
long, when he was a kid, when he was 14 or something, just a
Oh,
young
wow.
punk wanting to go to New York and be a punk.